Thanks, Marla. I'll call the February 14th, 2024 meeting of the Kickapoo Area School District Board of Education to order, and we'll start with roll call, please, Marla.
Earl Wallace.
Here.
Isaac Wallace.
Here.
Rich James.
Here.
Cole Schrader.
Here.
Scott Walter.
Here. Second, affirmation of proof of publication of the agenda, please, Kim.
I, Kimberly Johnson, hereby certify that notice of the Kickapoo Area Schools regular school board meeting was caused to be published in the Epitaph News and posted on billboards in the following places on 2/5/24. The Kickapoo School Building, Citizens First Bank, Viola Post Office, and our school website.
Thank you, Kim. Relatively light agenda this evening, but we still need to approve it, so
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second it.
motion by Earl, second by Bo to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. Next up, we've got audience, visitors, and board members, and we do have a visitor, Carrie Vanek.
Hi.
Hey, Carrie.
How are you?
Hi, good. How are you?
Doing good. Getting situated here. Give me just a second. Obviously, I'm here to speak about the recurring referendum. And it has been known that there was a potential operating referendum in the future, as Olson has mentioned it pretty much every year since we've been here. However, a recurring operating referendum of this magnitude, and first of all, a recurring operating referendum and one of this magnitude was quite a surprise. I attended the listening session this past Saturday and had several questions answered, which were helpful. Kim, Scott, there were a couple other people there. It also became apparent that the Kickapoo Area School District description of the recurring operating referendum in the epitaph dated January 11th is confusing at best. Can or does the board intend to republish this so it's easily understood by all, or just how it will appear on the ballot? It's very confusing. People do not understand the 400,000, then the 400, then the 400, then the 1.6. And I think it left a lot of confusion. Did you notice that, Kim and Scott, when you were there?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that confusion needs to be addressed by the board in one way or another. As I said at the meeting, I am full support of a one-time operating referendum. However, a recurring operating referendum of this size and that is never ending is concerning, as it will continue to grow exponentially since it's open-ended. I don't know when it will stop. Over 2 years and approximately 20 board meetings were spent discussing a $2 million referendum, which is a one-time referendum for a pool with all-in construction cost of $3.5 million, which has a probable useful life of 20 years before major expenses will be required once again. Now there's only 2 months to decide on a complicated recurring operating referendum, which will potentially increase operational spending 4.4 million over 5 years, 8 million over 10 years, and potentially 28.4 if it rolled out to it for 20 years, like the pool. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I need to understand something or a question. Do these amounts that were being shown in the mill rate, do those include the allowable tax levy under the state cap, or is that in addition to?
The mill rates that are shown for if the referendum is to pass, what will happen, that would be our mill rate now plus the addition.
Does that include the approximately 1 million a year you get for the under the state cap for the levy?
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding the question completely.
Okay, from what I understood, every year there isn't a cap by the state, so only so much can be levied against the taxpayers to pay. So does that mill rate include that cap every year? Let's just say it's $1 million a year.
Yes,
So that mill rate that's been published does include the 4.4 million and the 1 million per year.
well, our tax levy right now is right around 2 million.
Okay,
And, you know, if the referendum is passed, the next year it would be whatever the cap is, plus the 400,000, if we need it all.
So it's 1.4.
Well,
The cap was like a million, like this past year, I think it
ours
was.
is, it's right
The
around
operating was,
2 million.
okay,
It was
I wasn't including capital and stuff.
1,900,000 something.
Okay, I was
Um,
just doing strictly operating expenses.
And that, but that also included, our energy efficiency bonds and the full
Right.
referendum. So yeah, it would be closer to probably 1.4 million for the state revenue limit, and then those were our exceptions
Okay,
to bring it to that 1.9.
okay,
So then next year, if everything else stayed the same in the referendum
Correct.
passed, it would be 400 more on that. Year after that,
but then next year, there's gonna be another levy up to the state cap. Correct? Is that separate or included? That's what I don't understand.
in your mill rate,
Correct, that's published.
yeah, the mill rate that we're putting out there is based on the entire tax levy.
Okay,
Not,
that's what you
not
did know.
just the referendum,
Okay,
Yep.
that was the
Yeah.
question, because I didn't understand that, and I wanted to ensure that it was all inclusive.
all inclusive,
Okay,
yes.
gotcha. Okay. So, let's check where it was. Oh, here we go. And another thing I don't understand is what's the urgency? There's been talk about a recurring operating referendum for at least 6 years. Every year I've attended a meeting, it's been 6 years, and there's a drumbeat, there's going to be an operating referendum. So I don't quite get the urgency of just the 2 months of notice here, when all along it's been known that eventually there would be an operating referendum. And in addition, I wanted to know why not have a one-time operating referendum of, let's say, 1.6 million, that would cover 3 years, and after 2 years, let's see where we are. And then roll out another one time that goes 3 or 4 years, and then see where you are. Because obviously you have to have some budgeting capability, I understand that, and planning for the future. And when I asked this at the meeting, because I did attend the listening meeting, and when I asked this, I was told it affects the state aid received. So how, and if there is a difference in state aid received for a one-time versus a recurring referendum, what's the difference? I don't understand that.
So the state aid that's received is based on your expenditures and your revenue limit. It's a very, very complicated formula in a revenue limit worksheet out at DPI, where we put in a multitude of factors, and then it calculates out what our revenue limit is. When there's something called shared costs in the state of Wisconsin, and so your share of expenditures, your state aid is based on that, along with all the factors that come into play with what the taxpayers cover. It's a complicated concept to try and explain.
So the
But-
question I have though is, if it's a one-time referendum versus a recurring, is there any effect on state aid?
So that's building your base. So we have a base, that's what we're allowed to have between our state aid and our taxpayer money, our tax payments. And that changes a little bit every year. It's based on membership, it's based on declining enrollment exemptions. It's if the legislature changes the revenue limit ceiling, all that stuff has an effect on it. But with a recurring referendum, let's say that we had 700,000 we could get between state aid and taxpayer money.
Okay.
And we run a non-recurring referendum for $300,000 each year for 3 years. So the year before the referendum, we have 700,000. The next 3 years, we have $1 million each year. Then when that referendum ends, we drop back down to the 700,000. With a recurring referendum, we're building our base up. So if we're at 700 now, then we add 400 next year, then we're at 1.1. We add 400 the next year, we're at 1.5. 400 the next year, 1.9, 400 the next year, then we're at 2.3, I guess.
Something like that.
It's been a long day of numbers, but then it remains there.
Okay.
It stays at that like 2.3. Once we build it up with that recurring referendum, then that's where our base stays.
Okay, that makes sense, because I think that's what Kim explained to me at the listening session. And I just think it'd be really helpful if we had not only a listening session, but an educating session. So people understand the difference and the effect of a one-time versus a recurring. Because as myself, I didn't really understand that either. Another reason I'm leaning towards obviously towards a one-time referendum would be because of the CPI inflation index, which is, we've had 20% inflation, which everybody knows over the last 4 years. And that's really difficult for a lot of people in the district who unfortunately haven't gotten any raises or even worse situation. And I'd like to comment as well, there's 2 ways to pass a referendum. One way is to educate your voters. And you're doing that with a listening session, but once again, 2 months is just really, to me, is not sufficient to educate the voters. And the other way is to frighten the voters into voting using the terms of by threatening cuts to service. I just think that's really not the way to motivate voters, because you have a lot of very vulnerable members of the district who are on a fixed income who would vote out of fear and make significant cuts to their already limited resources, so a child's education doesn't suffer. And I'm sure everybody knows a grandparent or somebody like that in the community that whatever it is for the kid, I'll do it. And I just think that would be helpful as well, to use education. And in addition, since approximately $300,000 is the annual cost of the pool for now, which is $25,000 a month for the pool, why not use Griffin funds to cover the pool cost, and as annual costs increase, continue to use Griffin funds? I'm not sure why we're not using Griffin funds for the pool expenses, which would reduce obviously some of the operational expenses. So I'm not quite sure what that is. There also are quite a few words in the literature that if this referendum is not passed, is akin to a disaster immediately, but I thought the school board could borrow money. Has the school board borrowed any money this year? And can the school board borrow money? So possibly more time could be spent educating the voters and working with them so they can understand this referendum. So depending upon what happens, obviously in 5 weeks now, we've left of the 2 months is approximately 5 weeks. So maybe place a referendum on the ballot in the fall. Is there a possibility of the school borrowing funds? I thought the school was looking at that last year when I attended the budget meeting. Is that not a possibility, or?
I think it's always a possibility, but.
So that goes back to the urgency. I'm just trying to understand why it's just so urgent. We only had 2 months notice of this. I mean, if the board could borrow money, it seems like there's a little too much urgency and push on this in such a short period of time. As I mentioned, the pool took 2 years for $2 million. So I'm not following that. And obviously it goes without saying, everybody wants what's best for the school and the students. There's a lot of loyalty here, and for good reason. My son graduated a few years ago and loved his experience at Kickapoo and really liked his teachers. And I really think that it's also important that everybody, as Scott, you mentioned on Saturday, that everybody else speak and have a dialogue. And asking questions about the recurring operating referendum is not being disloyal to the school or to its students. So it's really important for everybody to understand that people just need to gain the knowledge and understanding of this recurring operating referendum. I think that might be all I have to say. So thank you.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie.
Moving on, item 5 on tonight's agenda, expense vouchers and receipts. Which are in the packet. Do you have any questions?
We have to do some work on a garage door down in the bus barn or something.
The cam, or.
Well, it said for Jeff Windorf, it's in garage door express. I just wondered if we had a door down there. We had
Yes, it was a door, and I can't remember if it was 10 or 20 years old, but it was old. It was not, it was on its last leg.
put a new overhead door is what it is, right?
Yes.
That's what I was wondering.
Mhm.
No other comments, I'll entertain a motion to approve tonight's expense vouchers and receipts.
I'll make that motion.
I can second it.
Motion by Isaac, second by Rich. To approve, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Next, the consent agenda's got a number of items tonight. Minutes from our January 10th regular school board meeting. Nicely, a number of donations to the school, including Organic Valley's donation of $10,000. And our good friend Aaron Cade bought new warm-ups for the JV girls. He also purchased new middle school girls basketball uniforms, having the club pay $600 with Aaron paying the remainder. Total for the uniforms is around $1,300. We also had a $600 donation to the music department from Ruby Mary. So a number of nice donations. The 2023-24 district calendar, which is in the packet and we discussed at a previous meeting. And then a number of field trips, senior trip for band and choir to Minneapolis, girls wrestling bi-state and lacrosse, boys wrestling bi-state and lacrosse, and the travel club trip to Colorado in June of 25. Also an FFA spring trip to Stevens Point and a senior trip to Sheboygan in May. And then entertain a motion to approve those items as part of the consent agenda.
I can make that motion. I'll second it.
Motion by Rich, second by Earl. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. The one item on tonight's action agenda, there's a photograph, aerial photograph in the packet. Cameras for the bus garage. A quote from TC for 2 cameras at a cost of $5,454. Is there more detail?
Jeff had some conversations, and especially with Go Macro, there's a lot of people in that area, a lot of movement. And so with the use of cameras, they felt that that was a safety concern, and just be able to engage the camera should anything ever happen, or with all of the different people that kind of gather around down there, I guess.
It's pretty high for the cameras.
Hi.
It's pretty high, yeah.
Was there concern that there's people that are gonna mess with the buses, or there's a bunch of Go Macro people and the bus is gonna hit them? Yeah, what their safety concern.
Jeff just brought it forward and said he thought having cameras on the building could prevent any potential,
Oh, no, I mean, that makes complete sense. I
Yeah.
mean, like vandalism or whatever, I was
just to keep an eye on the building. I don't know that he necessarily meant, during their routes when they were driving. I think just mainly while people weren't there to keep an eye in place.
So
Engaged
Go
is-
Macro is not recommending, I mean, not
No,
suggesting it, just they have a lot of
right,
people there,
just,
okay,
yeah,
okay, that makes sense, yeah.
It does sound like quite a bit of money. I'm not a security expert.
I'm
but
not,
a few $100 you can get cameras for your home.
Yeah, just-
That's the same here, I guess, I don't know what the.
I think the recommendation was to go to TC Networks just because they, put in all of our cameras here at the school.
So it would just be an extension of the service there.
Right, and I think it was, the service part was part of the issue, right?
It's got slow internet service, so they can only do 2 cameras at the most. We just kind of know where everything is and what we need and.
I can take it back and engage them in more conversations though, because we haven't had those cameras. I don't think it's an urgency. I think they want to
Yeah, maybe that would be a good idea.
Yeah,
Has anything ever happened, you know, I mean, vandalism or anything stolen that they know of?
Everybody okay with that? Can we get a little more detailed information? Does that include, I see all the hardware and stuff on here and the installation cost, but does it include the something about maintenance or?
the service,
Guess that'd be like rolled into what we currently have.
Yeah.
All right, well.
I'll bring it back, yeah.
Then we're already down to the informational agenda with a few discussion items leading off with the AGR assessment, which is the last page in the packet.
The last page, I guess that's me. So I had to fill out the AGR report, which is a lot harder to read. If anybody wants to see it, I have it. The full one that's filled out. But Kim said that this was easier for everybody to understand if I put it like this, like you got last year. So obviously the 9-1 beginning of school, the baseline of where, and all the percentages are on the FastBridge. A reading and early reading for K1, which is the name of the test, and then it's called A reading for second, third, fourth, and fifth. And also on the AGR report, we also put a words per minute that goes in the FastBridge. But you can see where the baseline was, how many percentage of high-risk kids we had and low-risk kids. And I was a little nervous there in the second week of September when I saw how high some of the numbers were in first grade especially. But when you look in December, we made a lot of progress. And I think the key is that your support of the interventionist with having Sherry here 3 days a week, and also with Tracy, and we put in some dedicated win time. So every grade has a half an hour every day that we scheduled to make sure that kids that were in the high risk and medium risk that they're getting extra instruction besides their core reading. So they don't miss any time in their core reading now, but starting at 12 o'clock, from 12 until 3, there's a half an hour of time when kids are pulled out for that extra reading. And then in kindergarten, we leverage Tracy in the morning. And what they do is before Trace would take the kids that were a little lower, but then talking Amy and Tracy as a group, they thought it would be more beneficial to be able to take more groups for Tracy to take them for more intensive phonics instruction. And Trace wasn't convinced that was great for kindergartners, and now she is doing backflips of how happy she is and how much they're learning and how much they enjoy it. I dug in a little deeper because I was curious, first kindergarten numbers this year to last year to see if that change had really made a difference. I don't have it. I'm not exactly sure, but when I looked at the growth, so I took last year's FastBridge, so this year's first graders in kindergarten, and I looked at their amount of growth from the fall to December, and it averaged their growth score was about, let's say, 6 to 7 points. And this year, looking at that same group of kids, their average growth was 14 or 15 points. So that's showing me that what we're trying to do is paying off. And I know the first grade went from 5% high risk to 10% high risk. It's one kid, so it's not a big jump. With there being 20 of them that are being tested, it's easy to see where they are. And then along with that, we also, the first Thursday of the month, we meet, we set up an academic concern meeting. So then Katie and I and Tracy and Sherry and Taylor all meet on the first Thursday of the month, and anybody who's at risk. And then I have a sheet. It's changed a little bit over time because I've been able to zero in a little bit more on exactly what we need to be looking at with the FastBridge stuff, with the FastBridge scores. And then we can tier them, and then we have listed what interventions they're getting, because some kids are getting their win time, but we're sneaking them out at other times in the day to get them a little extra boost. So some of those kids are actually going 3 times a day for extra reading and math. Sherry does a little bit more of the math, but the AGRs, this is what has to go on the report. And then as my understanding is I dig more into the AGR, this board has to see it, so this is when you get to see it. But yeah, when you look at it, there's a lot of growth there, especially from those high-risk kids, all those numbers have dropped, so. 3rd grade makes some big jumps. 2nd grade did, I'm proud of it, and I told them that, told everybody, I think, proud of them. They put in a lot of hard work, and I think our kids are making some nice growth, so. Any questions I can try to answer?
Coming out of COVID, there were a couple classes that were underperforming,
Yep,
that were kind of identified at a couple previous board meetings.
Yep.
What grade are those?
4th and 5th more. 3rd grade, actually, at the beginning of the year, I was a little worried about. 3rd grade has made some nice jumps. 5th grade is, and this isn't to make excuses, but 5th grade is that statistical anomaly where we have almost 30% are actually have an IEP in special ed.
Okay.
So they're making progress, and we're doing the same thing with them. They get their win time, they go to Taylor, they go to Sherry, they go to Tracy. They're on the list, and we're getting them extra support as much as we can. Their growth, they're making growth, just not quite as fast as I would like. But, I mean, that's part of it. I'm sure you hear it from our #1 special ed teacher, but I wish they would we're doing everything we can to get them as much growth as they can. And the kindergarten has made a huge jump. And if you're ever in my office on the wall, I have all the grades listed, and there's everybody who fell on the fast bridge at the high risk is on a pink post-it note, and then it's green for some risk. And I told her, at the staff meeting, and I bring it up all the time, it's right in front of me every time I look up, so I know what I need to work on. And then their job is to make sure every time we take a fast bridge test that I move names. And now a bunch of the pink names are in green because I ran out of post-it notes. But as we slide them down, they're moving, and I'm taking them off, so we're going in the right direction. And I think the dedicated win time and the use of Sherry and Tracy, I think, is what has driven it the most. So we'll keep doing that, and hopefully in the margins. And when we started this year, when everybody asked, if they said, well, we have math and reading, which deficit do you want me to work on? I said, let's teach them how to read first, but we're putting most of our focus on there, because if you can't read the test in 5th grade and the math test, it's kind of hard to get the math problem right. We're not ignoring it. That's where the focus has been the most. And that for like the state test, the social studies test, if you can't read that, the science test, it makes it hard. It's not all about the test, but that's what I told, when in doubt, I told Sherry and Tracy both, when in doubt, let's make sure we can read. And they have made growth in 4th and 5th grade too. It's just, the AGR report is just, okay.
Yeah, those numbers look really good almost across the board. And thinking about what you said, and I guess one of the take-home thoughts or messages for me is the role of those interventionists, which at least one is on soft money, right? The
Right.
ESSER funding. So thinking past the ESSER funding, these people are having an impact at an important age. Any other comments? Thanks, Andy. That's really informative stuff. Okay, next up, we had talked about everybody getting out and continuing to communicate the operational referendum, the need for it, rationale behind it, et cetera. And I see Marla or Kim, somebody has put together a list of all the town and village meetings. We had all agreed to try to get on those agendas, so. I know for myself, I am going to Sylvan March 12th. Everybody else having luck getting on agendas, or have you tried to make the phone calls yet?
I haven't gone yet, but I plan on Liberty on the 11th and Creedstown on the 14th.
Okay, thank you, Rich.
I'm on the one from Bloom on the 12th, so.
I know Janet was going, I think, to a couple. She's not here tonight. And Peggy's going to a couple. I thought, yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Thanks, Tom. All right, I guess that was just a item to keep that on everybody's radar. Those are important discussions to have, as we heard from our visitors tonight. There's a need for transparent and very clear.
And they're all consistent.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, what do we have for the resources to take those meetings now? I mean,
I was just gonna say, if you need anything or any documents, when we go and we listen to the listening session, now we're trying to gather some more materials to put together to respond to what we did here. And I think that is, you know, clarification and understanding between the non-recurring and the recurring.
Yep.
So we're trying to work that through really quickly to how to best communicate that and putting that all together. The recurring and non-recurring. So the confusion with the January 11th and the like what was in the brochure, I think most of the people there felt the brochure was understandable. The January 11th, I think that he was bringing forward was part of what Bonnie had written as a response to recording our meeting. So that probably wasn't as clear, but the language that we have is from Baird, and Allison reached out again to say, is there another way that we can explain this if people are struggling to understand?
so this is the question on the
That is the,
ballot.
right,
And I don't think, it's too late to change that, right? I mean,
That's statute.
yeah,
but
so-
to help them understand what it's saying, I guess.
But this isn't what Carrie was referencing, is this, she was referencing what was in the,
And
Yeah.
January 11th,
Okay,
which was early on, like, did we even,
yeah.
So it
probably had a
was- it
meeting
was-
prior to that.
right,
We
so
talk about
she
the
was
referendum.
recording information in the paper that we weren't putting out a statement quite yet, is what that confusion was about.
and there was a note in your stuff here about the same, like, there was some confusion around the question. Is that still?
And that's specific to that conversation.
Okay,
Oh.
So it's misleading having that January 11th article from Bonnie.
Say,
use
do we need to
that
get her
as-
to redo a different article, print it?
Right, and we're putting in the paper every week, we put on the news feed, where we have a new brochure ready to go, or
It's in draft form right
In
now.
draft,
It's
we're-
getting there.
we're fixing a few things to respond to, speaking directly to why we're phasing in the 400,000 to get to the 1.6. And then in that brochure too, it also addresses the recurring versus the non-recurring. And why that we feel that is in the best interest of the district and financially wise moving forward. So we're explaining that. I had a phone call, and his feedback to me was the mill rate information. Where we give like the specific numbers, the 5.72, the 702. He felt like we were asking people to do too much of the math. So we added another information on the brochure that just shows that it's, as we increase, it's just an addition $2 and not an entire, right?
Mhm. Yep.
So it was clarification on that. The mill rate information, clarification on understanding why building in the 400,000 to get and then sustaining. And then why the difference between the recurring and non-recurring.
That's good, those were the big things that.
Those were the big
information
things.
session.
And you know, we went through, Kent actually put together that nice graphic where it shows kind of our revenue limit and the minimal CPI increases throughout the years, which we were able to sustain through those years. And then, when we had like a 2 point whatever increase in inflation, we also were given 179 or 75 per pupil increase. And then it shows once we get to the inflationaries of 4.7 and 8 and 4.2, we just weren't able to recoup that. And bringing in those ESSER funds for that short amount of time and then dropping them away gives us that fiscal cliff, which gives us the urgency, what we're finding in the Baird models. And I mean,
But you said you're updating the pamphlet with all that?
well, yes, we're getting all of that together, and then I'll put together some more slides that will speak specifically to those points so that we can have those for these March dates. And they'll fly with March 6th to that listening session.
Yeah. Yeah, because I'll need them, because I know I think there's somebody on the Liberty Board that has already talked to us and doesn't like the reoccurring, so
Yeah,
I need to be prepared.
yep, I will get all that. I will get it all.
I think with the reoccurring part is the push that sets the base, that make,
Mhm.
I'm not smart enough to explain it like you did. I thought that was great.
Oh,
And then anytime you wanna bring up how awful it is to keep going back every 3 years and how that sets you back.
and it costs money to go back every couple of years, not just the time that's spent by the business office and the administration, but also there's costs involved, real money costs involved in going back every time.
You can't borrow for operating. I mean, you borrow against that's why you have your
Well, you-
fund, that's why you have your fund.
Balance,
Yeah,
right?
that's why you have your fund balance. You can't. But every school district would do that. How would you ever pay it back?
Right.
Good.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean, why would the bank give you one?
no, because you don't have income to do it.
That's right.
But that's what she said that. I'm like, oh, I can't.
Well, I think that's why we need to be clear that I could be wrong, but I thought audience to visitors was 5 minutes and they say something. It's not a question answer. Because I'm sure like when other people talk to us, they would have liked to ask a bunch of questions either. So I think we just need to clarify, if that's true, we need to clarify that to people that you come talk to us, you get 5 minutes and we listen to your input. It's not an answer session.
Are they told that when they call in to get on the agenda? They get from.
No, I didn't, I thought it would be addressed here, but
Yeah, I'll make
I
a
can
point of
mention that,
mentioning
yeah.
that, yeah.
But because you did a great job, it's unfair to you.
Thank you. Yeah, on the spot.
Well, it makes it hard. Because Westby, we're not supposed to reply. Jerry, well, and it makes it hard because sometimes that makes people frustrated because they ask questions, you don't give them an answer depending on what I thought was great. Jerry would just give me a dirty look sometimes. That was during COVID, but.
Maybe that's something to just, as people like want to speak, maybe that's something we just tell people, hey, if you have specific questions, send them so they can be addressed. When the board really can't address ad hoc questions in the moment.
I think when we get to that agenda item in the future, I'll just make some statement that you've got 5 minutes. This is not an opportunity for discussion, but an opportunity for us to hear from you, something like that.
Yeah, an answer can be more thoroughly researched and thought out
Yeah,
at a
provided.
given time.
And it's not just for people here. I mean, it's fairness to everybody else. If everybody knew they could come and just ask questions, we could be here all night and, a bunch of people comes.
So when's the next board meeting? Mark,
13th,
what is it?
I think March 13th.
13th?
Yeah.
So we have a lot of these meetings before then. Should we individually just swing by and grab a stack of brochures and whatever else? When will the updated be?
February 21st is our goal to send them in.
Yes,
Okay.
we're hoping to have it
And then we
done
should
into
have
the
them
printer
complete.
by then.
You send them out again then
too?
Yes, those will be mailed out as well.
Okay,
So we should have those by the last week of February.
well, they'll be mailed out to everybody so most of these folks will have already seen it, probably.
But it
Still-
can't hurt to take extras with.
Yeah, I think I'd like to take
When is our election date?
second.
Lee Griffin's birthday. All right, any other?
Another listening session or anything?
No, I'm just thinking about just the question on urgency despite, many board meetings of presenting this information, so.
Yeah,
Yeah. Maybe we should mention the next, in case anybody would wanna come, what's the date again?
March
March
6th,
sixth.
and that's here at 6 o'clock in the
And
auditorium.
that will be a question and answer. I think that's-
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an opportunity for people to come and ask questions and have the resources available to provide them graphics and everything they need to know, so.
Yeah, this past Saturday, it broke down pretty quick, didn't break down, but it developed pretty quickly into a question and answer. Which was good.
Yeah.
Everybody got there.
Yeah, that's what they're for.
Right, then you can have an opportunity to listen to where there's a gap in understanding.
We should talk about that, maybe how to format the next one. It's more abrasive of.
I do apologize for not being there.
What's that?
I do apologize for not being there.
Oh, that's okay.
I was ill.
What it doesn't-ish attendees.
I sent it,
Oh, that's right. it's in this.
can't remember.
All right, thanks everybody for stepping up and volunteering to go to your local town or village meeting. Next item for discussion, the 3K program for the upcoming 24-25 school year.
Yeah, just kind of wanted to give you an update that we remain with 21 students. All but 6 of those students have registered for 4K, anticipating more. All but 2 are not within our district that will probably not go, come to Kickapoo. And then we've had an additional 6 sign up for 4K registration. Yeah, it's going really well, and the kind of the setup for how Sam is running it has gone really well.
They're not very big.
Right. At this point, you know, for next year, I guess it's something we're gonna have to revisit because we don't have funds available at this point.
We don't know what our funding will be.
We don't know what our funding will be, so.
Is there, I mean, I think the cost for this year was fairly
Right, we
Insignificant.
figured it'd be about 7,700 for the entire year.
to do it again.
Mhm. But a lot of great feedback, and really it's the schools in the area we're reaching out to find out more. Cause they too are, I mean, obviously Lafarge has and North Crawford, but Westby and Viroqua and kind of that group of supers were kind of talking how it was set up and how you were doing it.
We have to cut it off at the end of April because with 2 of our teachers about to have kids, it makes our sub. Sam came and asked me the other day about when we have to quit. We don't have enough subs because we need, who subs for Sam is gonna be a long-term sub, and so, but yeah, so first week of May, I think, so it's just a couple of weeks, but.
So that's all I had on that. Just wanted to give you an update on what that looked like and understand the costs associated, but it's going really well.
So in terms of assessment, as they enter 4K and start to engage in the fast bridge assessments, the AGR stuff, we may have a sample of kids that are coming out of a 3K program and some kids that are just starting at 4K. It might be a neat in the future comparison to see what.
Yeah, this would be our first year, half year, basically.
Yeah. Little learning opportunity. Any other comments? Thoughts?
I think it's really cool. My son's in it, and Thursday is his favorite day of the week. Can't wait to get there. I think there was a snow day or he was sick or something a couple weeks ago and they didn't have it. He was so bummed out. It's such a neat thing. I don't ever remember being a kid and being like, can't wait to get to school. And for him to say that is really cool to get him started on that, like loving school. It's really important.
That's fantastic.
It's good feedback. Thank you.
Next up then, last item on the informational agenda, schedule of meetings, and a note that March 13th is a policy meeting, and I know Marley, you've been sharing some of the policies that need to be addressed.
Have that at 6 before the meeting, that
Yeah, I
sounds.
think that's what we talked.
6 o'clock, yeah.
So I'll go through the email she sent like I've done in the past and send you and Peggy an email on stuff, just so we're
Okay,
prepared for it.
thank you.
We also need to have, be thinking about a negotiation meeting. I don't, who's on negotiations?
Who's on that, Rich, Janet?
Am I on? I don't think I'm on that.
I know Janet is.
Oh, yeah, I am. Or is this an old one? Yeah, it's an old one.
Which color is the new one?
Yellow.
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 Yeah, Janet, myself and Peggy.
Yeah,
Well, maybe we can email them since they're not here.
Yeah, and Janet would do it. She's the chair.
All right, we'll take care of that later.
all right, moving on then, superintendent's report. Kim.
Okay, well, mainly just been working around with referendum stuff and working with the awesome office crew and admin staff over there. We also, I can report on our in-service where the staff was trained by Vernon County on our reunification and safety plan. We also had somebody in from WIA to talk about a 403B and starting that process of investing and saving. And then we had a rep come and was able to meet with individuals to kind of talk specific to their scenarios and how to best benefit their monies moving forward. We also had a big staff meeting where we were able to share referendum information so that all of the staff felt like they are well equipped to speak in the community, or if they had any questions that they were answered. And I think that went well. And then we also talked and spoke on the benefits of the outdoor learning possibilities that we have and how, while we are trying to combat mental health issues, that this is one area that we have exposure to the outdoors and all the benefits that that has on both staff and students. So different ways that looking forward to the spring, being able to get outside, well, even some with winter, but get outside and do some learning outside. At my PAC meeting recently, we're getting getting more updates on Act 20, working with Andy's, and Andy's working with CISA to get all of our staff trained for all to meet the requirements of Act 20. There too, we had another statewide Zoom meeting on school safety updates. And then just a shout out to Jeremy Lee. I've been going to his classroom at noon on Wednesdays. He does a sports psychology luncheon. And there's about 15, 20 students who attend, and his topics are all about really being mentally tough in sports and in life, emotional intelligence, the benefits of sleep and the choices that we make for our bodies. Talking about what success looks like and really about the process. So a lot of really great topics are being discussed in his room where he's just eating lunch with the kids and sharing the podcast. So I really enjoy going and listening and seeing how he's impacting those students. It was a great discussion. And beyond that, I think that's all I have today.
Can you refresh my memory? Act 20 is not.
Act 20 is the science of reading, where the state is requiring, they're trying to respond to the deficit in reading acquisition amongst the entire state of Wisconsin. So they have specific curriculum that they're going to, that we're required to use. And we're hoping that the curriculum that we just purchased a couple of years ago,
Let's hope so.
it's in those guides, which it should, because we were science-based. That was one of the checkpoints that we needed.
There's a new screener for, it actually, the chicken scratch on the wall, on the board is mine. So the teachers and special ed teachers, myself, it's broken into those modules. Those are videos and then tests after them. Kind of how it'll break out per week. And then we will meet in person. Tell me about it. In July, it's 30, that doesn't add up right, but I think in total it's 36 hours of time. And everybody in 4K, Sam's gonna do it through 3rd grade has to do it. And then as part of Act 20, the state has passed a mandate for a new statewide screener. So besides FastBridge, which I'm sure we will still use, everybody in those grades will have to administer the same test, which begins next fall, which the state has not yet agreed upon and or said what it's going to be or trained anybody on. So that may get pushed back. And then for every child on that screener who's below the 20th percentile has to have an individualized reading plan written out for them and shared with the parents, which is kind of what we're doing anyway. I mean, we haven't shared it with the parents. That's an Andy problem, not the teacher problem, because they will identify who they are and I will have to come up with a way that it's easy for everybody to get that to their parents.
So yeah, basically the state is requiring training for these teachers, and so Andy's working with CISA so the teachers were gung ho to get their training this year. I think we have to be trained by 2025.
Yep, and they wanted to do it before school started. And then and I'm sure Aaron wants to join me, as a principal, I actually have, and Sarah will have to do it as our reading specialist. We have 6 days of training, 3 days in person, and I'm not sure, I worry about that a little later. But I'm gonna do the training with the teachers too, so I don't know what to do.
Is that usual for the state to mandate curriculum?
This was passed by the legislature that was in power here lately to change reading source. I don't think it's an inherently bad thing. I think it's
Other than if they require us to purchase.
To purchase a brand new curriculum,
And then.
only pay
pay
half.
for half, yeah,
Because the curriculum, I think was like $50,000
right.
and it would cost like that for the next one and they're only going to pay half of it. That's a problem. And the fact that they're giving us a new screener and they haven't picked it yet. That's a problem.
Yeah, I know, I just envision the state setting standards and then schools adopting curriculum. So who's advising the legislature on this? Is it DPI or are they just, who knows?
Yeah, I don't know.
Seems like they're meddling where they don't need to meddle, maybe, I don't know, is that what it feels like?
Yeah, there is frustration, and I think, supplying, they are going to supply like 6 reading coaches, I think it was. But of course, they'll be hiring coaches from school districts, leaving school districts without their reading literacy coaches. And then like in some of my meetings, they're talking about most of these coaches are going to go to areas like Milwaukee and Kenosha. And so our small rural schools are going to be out of luck should we be in that category where we need intensive help, but we should be good. We've got a great staff and leadership, so.
Absolutely.
Leadership. We should talk.
That's you.
Well, thank you, Kim. Unless there's any
No,
other
that's good.
questions for Kim, we'll move on to the principal's reports.
Whose turn?
You've been talking a lot. So.
That's why mine's short. I got 3 things.
Usually every February, we make an announcement for who the valedictorian, salutatorian, and technical excellence winners are. So for the first time in my time here, and I don't know if there was before, but we actually had a tie for valedictorian. So
Oh, wow.
both had a 4.33, which is actually all A pluses all through high school, which is pretty amazing. However, it then goes to a tiebreaker for the actual academic excellence who gets the state scholarship. So that person who gets the actual scholarship is Evelyn Hazel. However, so she is one valedictorian, and Haley Gander, they are co-valedictorians. So Haley Gander and Evelyn Hazel are co-valedictorians this year. The salutatorian is Maggie Ring. and our technical excellence, which is kind of the valedictorian of technical excellence, which is careers and tech ed class and different things, is Jay Steen. So a big congratulations to them. This last couple weeks, just to put out, was school bus appreciation week and also counselor appreciation week. So just a big thank you to them for driving the kids, and Mr. Donovan and Mrs. Eggy for working with all the kids. Testing season is here, so just as a reminder, we have the ACT test on March 12th. So we've had a number of reviews here recently, and that will go through the month of February to get ready for that. I made a mention of it here a couple months ago, but our NHS process to look at that, to make some changes in the past. Basically, if you had, you met the grading criteria, you're automatically on NHS. We've tightened that up a little bit so that you actually have to apply. You have to fill out an application, and you also have to get, it's not a reference letter, but a reference. It's just more integrity to the process with it. The other thing that changed, and one thing that we had done that typically is that it no longer will include the freshmen. So it'll just be sophomores through seniors. So kids have all been made aware, but just with talking with Mrs. Eggy, who was taking that over a few years ago to try to change things a little bit, and have some effort with the kids in the process. Those are a couple changes to be made. Course changes in scheduling. We continue to work through that for next year, looking at some different courses that we might have, which I'll bring back here in the next couple months. Working with teachers with mid-year SLOs and getting updates on what they've done with kids and to see and look for improvement with that. And the last thing, March 1st is World Teen Mental Health Day. So we actually have somebody coming in. Her name is Zoe Ellerbush, and she'll be working with the kids with talking with different groups just as far as coping strategies, mental health, and things they can do to be aware of. So that's what I have. Anybody have any questions? All right. Thanks.
We had Catherine Miller set up an opera for the young, where they come in for performance in the gym for all the elementary kids and sing opera. And then she teaches the kids, there's kids in the chorus and that have different parts. And it's, she said she has done it every year now. It's kind of a neat thing for the kids to see, get a little culture. And kids were really good this year. We made it through. Books for Breakfast was the first Friday of this month, another well-attended Books for Breakfast, and it is Kindness Week, and if Mrs. Eggy's driving that, I can't say thank you enough to Mrs. Eggy for all the stuff she helps me with. And she had color for each day. Today was red, and then she's had different kids come and read a kindness thing for the week, like it was high fives on Tuesday. Today was set by somebody different at lunch. Tomorrow is wear orange or a neon yellow or neon color. And then on Friday, we're gonna wear Kickapoo colors. And then she asked, as part of that, she asked the teachers to nominate 2 kids from their room who have shown kindness throughout the year, not just this week. So just in part of our behavior plan, our PAW is the very first, the P is practice kindness, just to make that a fundamental part of what we're doing and how you interact with, not how you interact with kids, you're always kind with kids, but in discussing things with kids, are you showing kindness? Was that a kind thing to do? And try to, from kindergarten, from 4K through, is make that a pillar of what we are, what we do and who we are. So those are the 3 main things. Like Aaron said, I already talked too much. So any questions?
Seeing no comments or questions for the administrators, we'll move on to the next item, which will have us convene the closed session pursuant to state statute 19.85, part 1, paragraph C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, with our purpose being spring coaching positions, volunteer elementary wrestling coaches, and professional agreement with individual staff. I'll entertain a motion.
Have a good night.
Motion by Earl, second by Isaac, to move to closed session, and we need a roll call vote here, Marla.
Isaac Wallace,
Yes.
Rich James,
Yes.
Paul Schrader,
Yes.
Earl Wallace.
Yes.
Scott Walter.
Yes. Want to take us through?
Okay, for our spring coaching positions, head baseball, Mike Kaufman, assistant baseball, Eric Wiggle, middle school baseball, Trevor Clark, head softball is Lori Kaufman, assistant to be announced, middle school softball to be announced, Aaron Mitham. Head boys track, Jeremy Lee, head girls track, Kelsey Lee, assistant track, Jake Gerke, head middle school track, Katie Stenson, assistant middle school, Megan Schul, assistant middle track, Joe Zan. And let me include the volunteer wrestling coaches or.
I think so.
And for volunteer wrestling, coach elementary, Ruger Johnson, John Cena, and Anthony Cena.
All in favor of those individuals serving in the capacities of,
The second
Who
person.
second?
we need it, yes.
I'll second.
Second by Isaac. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And one other item?
Motion adjourned.
Second.
Oh, that's it. Thanks, everybody.
Tim's gotta get up in a couple hours, check the road. Gotta get home.
Yeah.
Bye.